People of the world, welcome to Marketing as a Foreign Language. This, the 276th episode. You are in for a treat because we've got a panel of experts today that are no joke. Danielle Hughes is super famous on LinkedIn. She'll tell you, super duper famous. She'll give you all the tips and tricks as to how that particular thing occurred. And also we have Janice Mean. Janice and I had lunch in Las Vegas the other day. She is the networking queen. She knows everybody. Let's get into those bios. Danielle Hughes is the Chief Personality Officer of More Than Words Marketing, a copywriting and branding consultancy. She helps individuals and brands to develop their genuine personality brand, creating content that sounds like you and giving you the space to truly be yourself in your messaging. Welcome to the show, Danielle Hughes.
Thank you so much, Kellen.
And next up, we have the incomparable Janice Mean. She is a writer, speaker, coach, consultant, teacher, and more. Marketing with JR, common sense marketing with extraordinary results. She is also the Google My Business queen. So she has two different queendoms. Welcome to the show, Janice Means.
Thank you. Welcome to my empire.
It's a benevolent queendom, let's say. Okay, so backstage we were talking about the three different tiers that we could place a potential business into: e-commerce, business, B2B and B2C. So let's just start with the most ubiquitous, which is a B2C company. Think like plumber or lawyer. Janice, why don't we start with you and Google Maps? What should someone who's starting up a local business do first?
Get that Google My Business entry defined, claimed, and make sure your map is defined so that you start showing up as soon as somebody Googles plumbers near me or attorneys near me. So you want to make sure that's on there and start collecting those reviews right away as well.
What's the best way for someone to get reviews in 2021?
Ask for them. So make sure you're saying, hey, if you had a great experience, write me a Google review. If there's something that went wrong, tell me first so I can fix it.
Danielle, do you do much work with Google Maps?
No, I do have a Google My Business page only because I was pressured into it because everybody says you should have one. And I get the email from Google telling me, great, people have looked at this or upload more photos, but I don't really work hyper locally. So, and I know that it goes beyond that, but right now it's just not part of I don't have the bandwidth for it. And I don't think it's going to help me move the needle for where I am right now.
Yeah, and this, of course, is true for many people. Also, I don't know if you knew about our special guest appearance, showing up fashionably late, David Somerfleck, now on the show. David is a digital marketing executive with over 20 years of experience working for marketing and advertising agencies, where he served as a project manager, helping guide multi-million-dollar brands towards increased profitability. David, good to see you.
Good to be seen. Thank you for having me on. What did I miss?
So we are talking about a typical B2C, think lawyer or plumber in a local service-based area. This person just launched their business. What's the first thing they should do?
Business to client. They just launched their first business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, think like an attorney who just jumped ship on his previous.
Okay, so no brainer. The first thing they should do is they should get together with an experienced professional marketer and say, let's put together a plan to reach our ideal consumer. The business owner isn't going to know who their ideal consumer is or how to market their business. Now, anybody on the panel, anybody watching, listening can disagree. That's fine. It doesn't matter if you disagree. I mean, come on. I mean, after working for agencies for 20, 25 years, hundreds and hundreds of business owners, I've yet to meet one business owner, one who knew what marketing was their own web developer, knew all about SEO, knew about e-commerce, knew sufficient programming to actually get that started, knew anything about marketing in the first place. And even if they did they have time to do all of that and then manage their own business? Unless you're living in fantasy land or it's a hobby that you just do for shits and giggles, you're not going to be able to execute. So you got to get together with a professional if you want to get results.
So I do live in fantasy land, but that's an entire
sorry.
that's a whole no, it's wonderful. It's truly wonderful.
It might be a happy place.
You know, my daughter often tells me that it's not a unicorn, Dad, it's an alicorn. An alicorn has wings. It's a whole thing. Anyway, so Google My Business, one of the things that people forget is question and answer. Okay. So anyone can go to a Google My Business profile and they can ask any question they want, which is insane. So I can go to a personal injury attorney's page and I can click on the little question and say, why are your burritos so hot? Why do you put so much sriracha on your burritos, personal injury attorney? And that will show up and Google does nothing to stop it. And so Google gives you the opportunity to have a FAQ page on your Google My Business profile. So get an employee to do it. Get a friend to do it. Have them ask you 8 or 9 questions and answer all of those questions on the Google My Business page if you're a local service-based business. Everyone knows that reviews are important, but sometimes they forget that recency of reviews is also a major factor. So yeah, you got 82 reviews, but the last one was 9 months ago. That's also a huge factor. And ultimately, Google posts are a big deal. Ain't nobody got time for that, I understand. But putting out consistent post content on Google My Business will help that maps
Google My Business
ranking go up.
Google My Business is great. It's indispensable if you want to rank in Google. But it's not the same thing as an actual website. You're not going to impact SEO beyond that particular review.
Yeah, if you don't have a website, then I guess there's not much for us to talk about. Let's talk a little.
It does help. It helps. Obviously, I mean, you can put videos, you can post, you can do everything that you said, but it's really important to make the distinction for anybody listening or watching who's thinking, I want to get a leg up. Nobody creates a website thinking, I just want a website. I think that might be really funny to have a website. Nobody does that. They create a website because you want to be seen. You want to make more money. You want to get more customers. So I think it's really imperative. Again, is it a business that you just do for silly fun? In which case, who cares? I mean, you could sit around, play cards and clip your toenails. But if you want to get more customers, which is to me real, I mean, Google My Business, yeah, it's indispensable, but it's not the same thing.
Well, I mean, this is a good transition to the next point, which is something Danielle mentioned before, which is picking your battles. So Danielle, you've mentioned this to me on a number of occasions. So let's use that example again of a lawyer. Let's pick those battles. Where do you want them to focus their attention?
Well, what field of law and where are their customers, right? Because somebody who does mergers and acquisitions law is a very different audience than somebody who does personal injury, right? So the personal injury lawyer, because that's local, might really want to spend time on Google My Business because they want to get found by people searching personal injury law in their vicinity. M&A or corporate law or other things, you have a very different audience. So Google My Business is probably irrelevant to you. Yes, you may want to search and come up in Google, but maybe you're a networker. And so you don't need people to find you via SEO. You need a website that's a calling card. So I think it's a matter of like what David said in terms of like, you need to understand your positioning first, right? Who is your audience? What do they need? What are their pain points? What do you do better? And how are you going to help them? And when you figure that out, then you can say, okay, so how am I going to reach these people? Where am I going to find them? And maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's Instagram or Facebook. It really just depends on who you're trying to reach and where they're going to spend their time.
Now, that's a good point. Obviously, David and Danielle make good points. Janice, I'm curious because you are the queen of networking as far as I'm concerned. A lot of times people will always defer to, oh, well, this social media platform or Google My Business over here or Google Ads. Let's give a shout out to Zoom networking, right? For a lot of B2Bs, for example, that sort of thing. So what role does that play in prospecting and growing a business?
So there's lots of networking out there for Zoom that do breakout rooms that you get to talk to people 1-to-1, 2-to-1, where you can do instant contacts about, how can we help each other? And usually the people who come to those with the intention of networking are usually, I'm going to caveat usually, of the giving mode of how can I help you? Who can I connect you with? Who do we both know? So Zoom at least lets you be face-to-face to do that. You know, the old in-person stuff, while here in Illinois, it's coming back a little bit, you know, it's still tenuous about whether to do it. So Zoom gives you that opportunity to meet people wherever you want, around the globe, locally, depending on what networking types of situations you're looking for. So if there's something you're looking for, we can probably share that in the chat later. Kellen, I can get you some links for that.
Sure. Yeah. So is anyone else suffering from Zoom fatigue?
I had my first in-person networking last night since before I'm also a huge networker. It's how I get all my business. And it was really exciting to meet people in person. Like one of them actually was a client who I've never met in person. And you forget who you know in real life versus who you've just met on the screen. So it was really kind of rewarding and exciting to do something in person for sure. But yeah, Zoom fatigue is real. I know a lot of people are just done with this. So it's hard.
I feel the exact opposite. I love it. I love it. I'm an introvert by nature, but I mean, you know, I don't really miss the in-person networking. I always thought that it was a tremendous time waste of an hour in traffic to get to the place, you know, a half hour to set up the conference room. Then I've got to get somebody to make sure everybody coming in to the event is paid, is not trying to get in for free or finagle something. I've got to get somebody to record the event. Otherwise, what's the point? Why am I doing a workshop if nobody's videotaping it? Then you got to break down the room after they're done. So I made a huge amount of money and actually did very well, surprisingly, in retrospect, teaching all these workshops, boot camps, WordPress this, SEO that, through all these different chambers of commerce and everything. So part of me misses doing those, but I don't miss the way of doing it. It was very exhausting. And like I said, an hour to get there. You got to give yourself time to set up. I've got to drink a Red Bull to get going. Does the projector work? Is it connected? No one knows. Okay, why doesn't anybody know what the hell's going on? All of this nonsense just to teach the workshop itself. Now I can sit in my home office. I have to worry about the lighting.
For a networking event, though, most of the time we don't have them recorded. You go there to say, hey, let's chat, let's meet up. Who do you know? Do color coding, that kind of stuff. And I try not to host too many networking events. I just go to ones other people host and get invited. Like I'm the queen of getting invited to somebody else's event because I can bring other people with me. So most of them, I shouldn't say most of them are unpaid. It depends if you're a member of the chamber or a member of that. Then you get to go free. If you bring a guest, they may have to pay. But you know, I'm not running into the obstacles too much in person other than the drive time. I do agree with the drive time. But then there are some of them that are just down the block from me. I could walk and do walk because sometimes it's harder to get my car out of my building than to just go ahead and walk.
I think the other issue with in-person networking events really is, I mean, so let's just say in general, okay, I live in Florida. Several times right before the pandemic began, just for fun, I went to several different networking events in Sarasota. I mean, I like the drive. My wife and I would look around afterwards and make a day out of it. So it's fun. But anyway, let's say you don't care about the drive. It's fun. Half the people there may or may not need the services that you provide. Okay. None of them were really expecting you. A quarter of them, I don't want to use a bad term. You may know where I'm thinking. A quarter of them are going to oppose you. So if I say I'm a digital marketing project manager, right, with a little consulting service, there's going to be 4 or 5 other people at least who say, I do the same thing. And I do it I'll build your professional website for $5 or whatever. So you're going to have people in the same profession who will oppose you, whether they mean to do it or not, or they get in the way. I prefer the more surgical approach to networking, just doing it online. If it doesn't work out, I click the button.
So let's pivot. So if you are an entrepreneur and you're interested in getting the ball rolling, the point that I would take away if I were you is that, yeah, networking is still alive and well, whether you do it on Zoom or you're going to try to fight this new post-pandemic, whatever that happens to be. You can make an argument that your particular industry is either better suited or not, but we'd have to talk about your particular industry. I wanted to take a minute and talk about why Danielle Hughes is so incredibly popular on LinkedIn. So she shared our posts and all these people are loving it and I'm loving that. And I just want to talk about, or have you all talk about, is it worth it? We're going to start with Danielle, talk about LinkedIn, and we'll pivot to this question, which is it worth it to post on a platform where you're getting 10, 15 views? And you've been doing it for 6 months. Now it's 12 months. The time's going by. You continue to get 8 views, 12 views. At what point do you just give up? Go ahead, Danielle.
Well, I would say, what is the quality of those views? It's not the quantity, right? If 4 of those views turn into business, then yeah, it's worth doing. If you're getting 1,000 views and none of it turns into business, like, is that better, right? So I don't think that I don't think that should be the question. I think it's quality. I think that frequency, you have to think about also, like, what are you putting out? What is the message that you're putting out there, right? Because a lot of times you're just doing this because you're like, I have something to say and I want to share it with the world, or I have a question to ask, or I want to gain some knowledge. And I want people to just see me on a regular basis. I always say, your email newsletter or your LinkedIn posts are just that little, like, tap on the shoulder that you're still there and that you still exist, because you never know the moment when somebody's going to need your services, and you want to be able to show up at the moment that they need you. And I just forgot the rest of what I was going to say. Oh, frequency and consistency, but also thinking about... no, it's gone. I'm sorry. It's completely
Here's what I wanted to. So there are these things called LinkedIn pods that I didn't even know were a thing, and it's a group of people who will share and like each other's posts. And if you want to be in one of these things, apparently you have to be a cool kid like Danielle Hughes. Is that true, Danielle?
No, you just have to network a lot, so you meet a lot of people who invite you to be in their pod.
See, I got it all backwards. And Janice, you were mentioning backstage something similar in YouTube.
Well, on YouTube, but we did on Facebook pages. So business pages, a group of business owners got together, and we met every day at 6:30 p.m. Talked about whose pages we're sharing, what's working, what's not working, what kind of posts to go, what kind of engagement you're getting. But again, to Danielle's point, is your audience on Facebook? So if I'm going to put in all this work, but none of my audience, none of my ideal clients are on Facebook, don't spend the time. But if they are, then it's worth the time and investment to say, do we share the same customers conceptually, but our target products? Because we had a mix of products and a mix of services. So products people had a different set of tasks to do than the services people. And since I'm mostly service-based, I was in the services-based group of talking to services people.
Yeah, and David, you had mentioned that you've thrown a lot of webinars, trainings, things of this nature. A lot of people struggle in that industry to get butts in seats. That is probably the primary complaint, I think, of your industry is they go, I'm brilliant, I've got all this great information, and I got 3 people staring at me after tons of marketing. So how do you get folks to attend?
Well, it's really a cost-benefit analysis. You really have to look at what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, of course, and then measure your approaches. If we're just talking about LinkedIn for webinars, is that what you're talking about, or any way in particular?
Yeah, my understanding is that you've thrown trainings. You had mentioned in your previous little segment that you did well. Using chambers of commerce. Was it that you developed a relationship with those chambers and they brought the people, or have you done like a spend on Facebook and throw in your own events?
I would never rely on one individual person or one individual source for anything, not for anything, except maybe my wife or, but that's obviously that's not business. And even, but yeah, what I would do when I was teaching workshops on an active, ongoing basis, very aggressively on a weekly basis, I would do it through that Chamber of Commerce. Now, the Chamber of Commerce is going to be disorganized and chaotic most of the time, and very few, if any, of their events are online, and that's what most chambers. Why that is even now, I don't know, but I would use the chamber. I would ask for access to their event calendar, so I would post to that. Then I would ask for access to any and all other information, their list. I would just basically take over, because why would you ask them to do it for you? They're not going to. So I would send everything through that I possibly could, but then I would spend some money on Facebook ads, as you suggested, to promote it. I would also have cross-pollination. I would create groups on meetup.com that were in that specific location geographically. So if you're in Denver, Colorado, then yeah, I'll create 3 meetup groups in different areas or zip codes of Denver, Colorado, where that event is going to go. So I've just created 3 mirrors to redirect interested people and matriculate people or enroll people into it through that way as well. And I would basically do everything and anything that I could and give myself about a month leeway to do that. In some cases, I would put an ad in physical tabloid or newspaper to bring in more people. And if it was on a holiday weekend, you'd clean up.
Right.
So
Clearly the takeaway, at least from my perspective, is that you gotta do it all. Getting butts in seats is one of those things where if you work for a company and you're doing training and they do all that work and you show up and you think, oh, I'm so magnificent, look at this amazing speech I just gave, but you don't really appreciate what it takes to get those people to attend, well, go do it. The same is true what David said earlier, which is, if you are a business owner and you specialize in, repairing garage doors, there is a language, which again is why this show is called Marketing as a Foreign Language, that you're not going to pick up Spanish in a weekend. Ain't going to happen. Marketing is very similar to that. So let's talk a little bit about social media. TikTok's been getting a lot of love recently. YouTube Shorts is new. It's a TikTok ripoff. You got your Snapchats, you got your LinkedIn, you got your Facebook groups, stuff all over the place. Let's take an example client, a B2B business. Okay, so let's say they are selling tax software, right, to businesses. Where should they go? What should they do to get clients? Don't all start at once.
Yeah. I would say definitely LinkedIn for sure, because if you're selling tax software, chances are you want small business owners. So they're going to be on LinkedIn most likely. So that's a great place to start. Maybe Facebook. But I would to me, that's the obvious.
If they're in groups that are all about entrepreneurs. So I belong to a women's entrepreneur network Facebook group that has 70,000 people in it. Okay, so there we can talk about tax software, but you have to be careful, because if you're not the group owner,
correct.
Yes, you're not the group owner, you can't promote, but you can at least answer questions as intelligent and then be looked at as trusted advisor. So it's got to be, how does it fit into your strategy? Do you have the bandwidth to do it? Because, and you start your own group about tax software, the pros and cons, and maybe that will get you some traction. So you really have to think about, do I have enough of a base, a pod that can help me grow?
All right. I didn't know if David was going to chime in there. So,
no, I'm ready.
Yeah, go ahead, David. You got thoughts on that?
Sure. So, okay. So you have tax software, right?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
So we have tax software that we're trying to sell or find customers for. As far as using social media marketing solely, or trying to limit it to that just for the sake of example, I don't think I'd really waste any money on Facebook or certainly not Twitter, which I have mixed feelings about, but I would probably invest some money in very, very hyper targeted ad spend with LinkedIn because that's primarily for professionals. So I would go after accountants, I'd go after accountant organizations on LinkedIn, and I really wouldn't mess around with anybody else because most startups are not going to be paying their taxes correctly. They're probably going to be audited like crazy the first couple of years and not know who's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I would go after LinkedIn very specifically. If I could do hyper-targeted advertising, I might look at Quora, I might look at Reddit. Obviously, I would have a website with tax software specific researched SEO. And I would blog on a very regular basis, on a weekly basis, whether I felt like it or not. And I'd have somebody doing that for me, or I'd outsource it or whatever. But I would at least dedicate 6 months to blogging every week on the ins and outs of taxation, the wonders of the software, promote those blog posts. Then I would create a tax podcast with video versions of that, of course, and promote those across the 7 Cs on every possible video sharing service known to man. I would cross-pollinate those. I would create at least 3 groups on Meetup specifically for accountants to talk about the wonders of your tax software, where you offer free demos to any and all accountants humanly possible. I mean, why not do it across the whole country? Create 20 groups and just have them all meet at the same time at the same online location. So I would cross-pollinate all of that. And I guarantee you that would show some traction.
No, that's great. I was hoping you were going to mention a live show, not a show, a podcast, it doesn't matter, a show in general, because to me, having accountant guests would be very important.
Absolutely.
And you just hear them out. Just go ahead, tell us about the latest and greatest in accounting, and you're all ears. And you can have panels of accountant guests.
Right. What's the latest accounting?
Double as a sleep aid for the rest of the world.
Danielle's like, that's right. Are you feeling a little bit sluggish?
Oh my
Well,
God.
fall right asleep listening to these accountants. That's right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so true. But no, and then the mention of the meetups, I think is a really good point, and that's something that I didn't that I wouldn't. Everything else you said, I was like, yep. And then when you mentioned meetups, I thought, yeah, that's one additional step that I think would be really helpful for that. We, ladies and gentlemen, 10:59 a.m. Ergo, we have 1 minute left. Marketing as a Foreign Language live, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're like most folks, you're going to listen to this after the fact or watch it on YouTube, youtube.com/Send It Rising. Why is it Send It Rising and not Marketing as a Foreign Language? That's because I own senditrising.com. Could not be happier with the folks on my team, WordPress, websites, SEO, etc. I want to make sure that our guests get the final word for budding entrepreneurs, words of wisdom. We're going to start with Danielle.
Develop your voice. Figure out who your audience is. Figure out what you have to offer them. Figure out what makes you different, and then lean into it some more.
Yes, ma'am. David.
Build a structured plan.
Period. Janice.
Period.
Be consistent with what you do, no matter what you choose. And if something's not working, drop it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is episode 276. We'll see you all next time. Bye for now.